So, are you thinking about separating from your spouse? Maybe thinking that divorce is going to happen, you're not sure about it, but the next step is going to be maybe you moving out of the house or your spouse moving out of the house. Well, stop. You need to do a little bit of research and think about what the potential consequences of your separation could be. So, I'm going to talk to you about the three different kinds of separation because, yes, you think that it's just a simple thing, but actually, there are legally three different types of separation that will be considered if you end up going through divorce. So, why is this a big deal? Well, it can affect the property division or alimony. So I'll say that in a different way. If you make one of these typical mistakes in the separation, which leads to divorce process, it could result in you either losing out on money or having to pay extra money. So to your spouse, your ex-spouse. So it's definitely worth thinking about the what ifs and doing a little bit of research on what your options are and what to avoid. Um, so the real issue to think about here is what state you live in. So it's always best to consult an attorney because they can tell you exactly what your state's rules are and how it could potentially affect your specific situation. But the first thing that you want to look at is if your state considers fault in divorce. There are a lot of states out there that don't allow grounds for fault in divorce. So that just means they have a blanket no fault grounds for divorce, which means they just look at it like you're both equally at fault for the dissolution of the marriage, and therefore who's ever caused the divorce isn't necessarily going to be affected worse than the other party who's like the innocent party in terms of the finances. So that's going to be your first job, is to look up what kind of state you live in. If you want to get a list of these states that have fault versus no fault grounds for divorce, send me a message. I'll send you a free list of those different states and what they all consider to be fault versus no fault grounds for divorce. All right, so here are the three types of separation, which are very important for leading up to divorce, to save you some money and some pain and heartache. The first type of separation is a trial separation. That's where you're living apart and deciding whether or not you want to get divorced. So in this type of separation, the same rules apply to your separation as they do to the marriage. Typically, ask your attorney for state-specific advice, but this is just general knowledge for this type of trial separation. So let's give an example. Let's say that you and your spouse are arguing and you move back in with your parents for a couple of months to kind of let things cool off and see if you can work things out or if you're going to get divorced. Well, during those few months where you're living apart, the income that you're earning during that time, the money that you have coming in from your paycheck, is still considered to be like marital property. So it's not like it's just yours and her or his money that he's earning is just his. It's still considered marital property. And the same goes for like debts. So if you open a credit card during that time and rack up a bunch of credit card debt, that's in general, talk with your attorney for state-specific advice, but in general, that would be considered marital debt, so you both would be equally responsible for that debt. And then the same with like medical bills. So that's important to recognize when you're going into separation, is that you're still on the line for anything your spouse does financially, and vice versa. So use that with caution. The second type of separation is legal separation. This is not very common. Typically, legal separation is only used for religious purposes. If you know, that was actually my case. That's why I really wanted to get a legal separation, was I didn't want to get divorced. My religion frowns upon divorce, so I was really trying hard to avoid it. So really was pursuing a legal separation. It didn't end up working out for me. You can check out other videos about that story, but so legal separation is a good reason for a religious reason for divorce, or it can also be used for insurance purposes. Let's say that insurance is a really big deal. If you have a kid on, you know, that has a lot of medical problems, and you need to stay on the insurance is a really key piece of your marriage. So that could be another reason why you arrange for a legal separation versus a trial separation. And then the third type of separation, the final one, is the permanent separation. And that's where you and your spouse are living separately and you're pursuing a divorce. And so unlike the trial separation, where typically the income coming in and the debts incurred are considered marital still, the permanent is then considered separate. So with the permanent separation, the really hotly contested item in that third category is the official date of separation. So why is that a hotly contested date? Because both parties can disagree on when that date was. So let's say that you're saying, no, we got separated on July 1st of 2017. And your spouse is saying, no, we separated officially on September 1st, 2017. And why is that a couple months difference important? Well, a lot can happen financially between September 1st and July 1st, or vice versa. So you could have paid, you know, $20,000 out of pocket for medical bills, like a big surgery that maybe you had to have or your spouse had to have, or maybe your spouse opened a credit card and spent $20,000 on, you know, luxury items. I'm sure that has never happened, but a lot can happen in just a couple months time. And so if that date is not very clear, then there's gray area for pointing the finger about who's responsible for what bill, or income coming in too, like, hey, you got that $20,000 bonus. I should have, you know, my fair share of the marital portion of that bonus. And another little thing to keep in mind on this hotly contested official date of separation is if you do like a trial night of getting back together with your spouse. So let's say, you know, you're feeling nostalgic and you go on a date to see if maybe things can work out between you and your spouse, and, you know, something happens that night, and, you know, of course it's consensual. Well, then the date of separation then moves to that night of your hot night date. I don't need to get into details about that, but that changes the whole picture. So be careful for, you know, your nostalgic feelings if your finances are a mess and there's like a hotly contested debt that you're trying to figure out, or a bonus that you're trying to switch or split. Just be aware of those things. You don't want to get cheated by anybody. You don't want to cheat other people. Just be wise, be aware of what is legal or what is your state considers to be grounds for divorce. So do your homework and keep your chin up, because you are an overcomer. If you liked this video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel and sign up for my newsletter. It's on divorceowl.com/opt-in.